Happy Saturday, everyone. Great to have you all here. We're running a little behind schedule. Our reader, Mr. Jameson, will be reconnecting back. He was having a little bit of issues with his computer. So give us a few more minutes. Meanwhile, let's continue to send the invites. By the way, this is Fernando Ramirez from Los Angeles, California. Great to have you all here. Dr. G.W. Parker, Lovey, Mr. Eric Wilner, Eva, Marianne, Monifa, Elisa, Mr. Ron Copeland. All right. We'll be right back. Oh, there he is. Jameson, great morning. Happy Saturday. Your co-host now.
Amazing morning, Fernando. Give me a few minutes. I haven't set up my PDF yet, so I will be setting it up in a minute, and I will be turning on the sharing and turning on my camera.
Excellent. Meanwhile, we'll continue to send the invites. So another 3 more minutes, ladies and gentlemen. We do apologize for the small delay, but it gives us a chance to reach out.
Um, Okay. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. Let me get my keyboards up here. Video. See how the video's working. All right, looking good. Got it way over there. All right. Good morning, good morning. We're up and good now. Let me get the other light on. There we go. Okay. Good morning and great morning to everyone. It's an amazing morning here. I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio. We are out starting with the book, and excuse me, continuing on with the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's Cashflow Quadrant. Of course, as you can see in the screen, it just takes me a minute to flash back and forth. Here's an amazing book by Robert Kiyosaki, second book in the series. And as you see, we all have the Cashflow Quadrant is on the cover, the E, S, B, and I, employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. We're continuing on in chapter 9, I believe, and we're going to go down to that again. I had it there. Chapter 9. Okay, be the bank, not the banker. And let me open the chat up again just to make sure to. And we have ones. Yes, thank you very much. Let me bring this up full screen so I have it. All right. Zoom it up a little bit, maybe. That's good. Okay. The rich create money. What a saying. The rich create money. Now, when we say create, they don't go out to the backyard and get a printing press out and start churning money out. We're not talking about dollar bills. We're not talking about coins. I like to would say they generate money. They generate it out of nothing. Interesting. I have focused on the B portion of the B formula, do, have, because without the proper mindset and attitude, you cannot be prepared for the great economic changes that are facing us today and talk about economic changes and talk about today. This book was made and published in 2011. Here we are in 2025, and the economic changes are probably tenfold of what they were back then. By being someone with the skills and mindset of the right side of the cash flow quadrant, you will recognize opportunities that arise from these changes and be prepared to do. This will lead you to have the financial success. And by the way, it doesn't matter who's in the White House, who is on the left, who's on the right, it doesn't matter who's in charge. These market forces, by the way, are natural occurring between like forces which mean economic transactions between you and me, or you and a company, or you and a country, or anything like that. These are just the natural economic or market forces that are natural, and they exist way beyond the forces of the government and the governing bodies. I remember a phone call I received from my rich dad in late 1986. Are you in the real estate market or in the stock market? He asked. Neither, I replied. Everything I've invested in building my business is in building my business, excuse me. Good, he said. Stay out of the markets. Keep building your business. Something big is about to happen. Something big. Now, this guy, by the way, Rich Dad, at this time, I think 1986. So Robert was learning about this like in the early 70s and before that. And this is after Robert Kiyosaki had been in America and been in business and had been building his real estate business for quite some time. So this is a shift that happened later on in his career. That year, the U.S. Congress passed the Tax Reform Act of 1986. Huh. In just 43 days, Congress took away many of the tax loopholes that people counted on to shelter their income. For people who were using those passive losses from their from their income property as tax deductions, they suddenly still had their losses, but the government had taken away the tax deduction. All across America, real estate prices began to plunge, in some cases as much as 70%. Suddenly, property was worth far less than the amount of their mortgages. Panic swept the real estate market. Banks and savings and loans began to shake, and many failed. People could not get their money out of the banks. And when Wall Street crashed in October 1987, Wall Street crashed in 1987, the world went into financial crisis. Fundamentally, the Tax Reform Act of 1986 eliminated many of the tax loopholes that the high income E's and S's depended upon. Many of them had invested in real estate properties or limited partnerships in order to utilize any losses to offset their earnings from the E or S quadrants. And while the crash and recession did affect people in the B and I quadrants, many of their tax avoidance mechanisms were left intact. That's very interesting. A lot of times you get your advice from your banker or your accountant on the E and S side, and that's who they primarily get their tax advice from. And then who they get their information from is from people that are promoting certain things, specifically tax shelters or tax deductions based upon losses. And that's exactly what this Tax Reform Act took away, where the B and I have other potential business assets that they can actually take losses and what they call phantom losses from, and meaning that it's like depreciation, for instance, is a phantom loss. And that is, those are intact, as it were saying. During this period, East earned a During this period, E's learned a new word, downsizing. They soon realized that a major layoff was announced. The share price of the stock of a company announcing the layoff went up. What? So layoffs made the company stock went up. Wow, that's interesting. Hmm. Sadly, most did not understand why. Where many S's also struggling to cope with the recession that was caused by decreasing business, higher insurance rates, and losses from the real estate and stock markets. As a result, I believe that individuals on the left side of the cash flow quadrant, meaning the E and S, were financially hurt and suffered the most as a direct result of the Tax Reform Act of 1986. Transfer of wealth. While people on the left side were suffering, many people on the B and I side, or the right side, were getting rich, thanks to government taking away from some people and giving to others. By changing the tax code, all the tax trick reasons for investing were taken away from people who were simply buying real estate to lose money. Many were high income employees and professionals such as doctors, attorneys, accountants, and small business owners. Prior to this period, they had so much taxable income that their advisors told them to buy real estate to lose money. And then with any extra money, invest in the stock market. When the government took that loophole away with the Tax Reform Act, one of the most massive transfers of wealth began. In my opinion, much of that wealth was taken away from the E and S side and handed to the B and I side for pennies on the dollar. When the savings and loans, the organizations that issued the bank loans, failed, billions of dollars in deposits were at risk. The money had to be paid back. So who was left to pay back the billions of dollars lost in savings and real estate foreclosures? Well, the taxpayers, me and you, of course, the very people who were already hurting enough as it was. Some of you may remember any governmental agency called the Resolution Trust Corporation, or the RTC, as it was commonly known. The RTC was the agency responsible for taking the foreclosures from the real estate crash and transferring them to people who knew how to handle them. For me and many of my friends, it was like a blessing from financial heaven. Remember that money is seen with the mind, not with the eyes. During this period of time, emotions ran high and vision was blurred. People saw that they were trained to see. People saw what they were trained to see, kind of like a magician. Don't watch my hand over here, watch this hand. Three things happened to people on the left side of the cash flow quadrant. Panic was everywhere. Number one, panic was everywhere. When emotions are high, financial intelligence often disappears. We go into survival mode, as it were. People were so concerned about their jobs, the failing value of their property, the crash of the stock market, and the general slowdown of business that they failed to see the massive opportunities right in front of them. Opportunities in a crash? Well, if you're a B and I, that's definitely the case. Their emotional thoughts blinded them. Instead of moving forward and beating the bushes, most people went into their caves and hid. Two, they lacked the technical skills required on the B&I side. Just as a doctor must have technical skills developed from many years of schooling and then from on-the-job training, people in the B&I quadrants must possess highly specialized technical skills. These include financial literacy, how to restructure debt, how to structure an offering, how to raise capital, understanding your market, and the other learnable skills. When the RTC said, we have a banker's box for sale, and in it is property that used to be worth 20 million, but you can have it today for 4 million. Most E's and S's didn't have the clue about how to raise the 4 million to buy the gift from the financial heaven, or know how to recognize, the good deals from the bad. 1 second. They lacked a cash machine. Definitely, when you change something so fundamental, to catch up is definitely a very big hurdle to look at as an E and an S, because now they shifted the rules, they shifted the game. Most people during this period had to work harder just to survive. Again, they're back in survival mode. By operating as a B, my business could expand with little physical effort on my part. By 1990, my business was up and running and growing. During this period, the business grew from a startup to 11 offices worldwide. The more expanded, the less physical work I had to do, and the more money came in. The system and the people in the system were working hard. With the extra money and free time, Kim and I were able to spend a lot of time looking at deals, and there were many. By the way, this reminds me back to the very beginning of this book, where he talks about the difference between a city had to get some water, and they hired two contractors. One was a guy hauling buckets, and one guy for a short-term solution, and another guy selling organizing a pipeline that was like a year-long solution. And it looks like definitely Robert created the pipeline with his transactions of 11 offices worldwide, and he became to work less because the system and the people running the system were creating and generating capital instead of him having to haul buckets. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. There's a saying that goes, it's not what happens in one's life that matters, but it's the meaning one puts on what happens that matters. Let's read that again. It's not what happens in one's life that matters, but it's the meaning one puts on what happens that matters. The period from 1986 to 1996, for some people, the worst time of their lives. For others, it was the best time. When I received that phone call from my rich dad in 1986, I recognized the fantastic opportunity that this economic change presented me. Real estate on sale, that is a fantastic opportunity. I recognize the fantastic opportunity that this economic change presented to me. Even though I did not have a lot of extra cash at the time, I was able to create assets by utilizing my skills as a BNI. Later in this chapter, I will describe in greater detail how I created assets that helped me to become financially free. And by the way, throughout time, there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of money that's cash. And as they hold the cash, it turns into trash, meaning it devalues. And in his Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow board game, it's richdad.com, he trains us through that board game how to recognize opportunity and take that cash and turn it into assets. So if you have a discount on a large scale of massive assets, money will be hunting you down to put it into your assets. One of the keys to a successful and happy life is to be flexible enough to respond appropriately to whatever change comes your way. Unfortunately, most people are not equipped to handle the fast-breaking economic changes that have happened and continue to happen. However, most people are generally optimistic and have the ability to forget. After 10 or 12 years, they forget, and then things change again. There's just one guy named Ray Dalio that talks about the changing economic times and the long-term debt cycle and the short-term debt cycle, and how that really affects everything in the cycles that happen. History repeats itself. Today, people have more or less forgotten about the Tax Reform Act of 1986. The E's and S's are working harder than ever. Why? Because their tax loopholes have been taken away. As they have worked harder to get back what they lost, their incomes have gone up, and their tax accountant has again started whispering the same old words of wisdom. Buy bigger houses. Interest on your debt is your best tax deduction. And besides, your home is an asset and it should be your largest investment. So they look at the easy monthly payments and they get sucked into a higher debt position. In my opinion, a great transfer of wealth is happening, and it may be happening in a very different way than we might expect. This is why my rich dad had me read books on economic history. Economics change, but history repeats itself. And money continues to flow from the left side to the right side of the cash flow quadrant, just as it always has. Many people are deeply in debt, yet they pour money into the stock market, often through their retirement plans. The B's and I's on the right side will sell at the top of the market just when the last cautious people on the left side overcome their fear and enter the market. Something newsworthy happens. The market will crash, and when the dust settles, the investors will move back in. They will buy back what they just sold. Again, we will have another great transfer of wealth from the left side to the right side of the cash flow quadrant. It will take many years to heal the emotional scars of those who lost money, but the wounds will heal just as another market is nearing its peak. At about that time, people will begin quoting Yogi Berra, the great New York Yankees baseball player. It's deja vu all over again. It's a conspiracy. Often I hear people, especially the East and West, say that there is some kind of global conspiracy held together by a few ultra rich families who control the banks. These conspiracy theories have been around for years. Is there a conspiracy? I don't know. Could there be a conspiracy? Anything's possible. I know there are powerful families who control massive sums of money, but does one group control the world? I see it as one group of people on one side with one mindset and another group of people on the other side with a different mindset. They are all playing this one big game of money, but each quadrant is playing from a different point of view with a different set of rules. The big problem is that people on the left side aren't able to see what the people on the right side are doing, but the people on the right side know exactly what the people on the left side are doing. And one of the interesting things to note is that a lot of the things that the people on the right side of the cash flow quadrant are doing are actually out in the open. It's just that we don't spend, or people on the left side, E's and I's, don't spend the time to learn what they're doing, or they only see it in like a magazine or the news articles. They don't take the time to dig into the public information that's available to see and understand and copy and or duplicate what they're doing. Witch hunts. Instead of finding out what the people on the right side know, E's and S's often go on witch hunts. Only a few centuries ago, when there was a plague or something bad had happened to a community, townspeople would go on a witch hunt. They needed someone to blame for their plight. They needed a fall guy. Well, witch hunts still go on today. Many people look for someone to blame for their financial problems. These people often will blame the rich for their problems rather than admit that their own lack of information about money often is the fundamental reason for their struggles. Heroes become villains. Every few years, a new financial guru appears and seems to have some new magic formula for wealth. In the late 1970s, it was the Hunt brothers who tried to corner the silver market. The world initially applauded their genius, but almost overnight, they were hunted down as criminals because so many people lost money after they followed the brothers' advice. Talk about social media and the trends and all these influencers that give economic advice. In the late 1980s, it was Michael Milken, the junk bond king. One day he was a financial genius, but right after the crash, he was tracked down and sent to jail. Individuals change, but history repeats. Today we have new investment geniuses. They're all over TV, on the internet, and financial publications. Some have even attained celebrity status. Warren Buffett is touted as a near god. When he buys something, everybody rushes in and buys what he buys. And when Warren Buffett sells, prices crash. Money follows him freely. If there is a major market correction in the near future, will today's financial heroes be tomorrow's hated villains? Time will tell. In every upcycle of the economy, in every upcycle of the economy, there are heroes, and in every down period, there are villains. Often, they end up being the same people. People will always need witches to burn or conspiracies to blame for their own financial blindness. For their own financial blindness or ignorance. History will repeat itself. And again, a great transfer of wealth will take place. And it's happening right now, too, as we speak. When it does, which side of the transfer will you be on? The left side or the right side? In my opinion, people simply fail to realize that they are in this large global game, a virtual casino in the sky. But no one will ever told them that they are important players in the game. The game is called Who is Indebted to Whom? Another great financial mind of the time says you're always paying interest. It's either you're paying it someone's always paying interest. It's either you paying the interest or someone's paying the interest to you. That's back to the ES and the BI. The one that has the asset is getting the interest. The one that is buying the asset is paying the interest. You're always paying interest. Interesting thought. Be the bank, not the banker. I think I'll take a break at this time and see who's out there and see what's going on. Let's go ahead and stop right here and open up the microphones. See if I get my slider bar up. There it is. Is there anybody out there?
Jameson, great read. You took me through the entire process of understanding where we are now in today's economical times, which is very noticeable when someone that has the power, economical power, can change the stock market. Elon Musk, as a matter of fact, asked everyone to cancel Netflix. And what
Yep.
did everyone do? Cancel Netflix. So, see, the thing is, E and S, I believe, are too emotionally attached to the outcome. So they have no control whatsoever, when something goes up or goes down. They do what everyone else does. And if someone influential that knows about money opens their mouth, who do you think are the ones that are most affected? Are the E and the S. Why? Because they are emotionally attached to people that understand the money game. So I mean, we've seen shows now get shut down, right? And then they get right back up. I forgot what this funny guy's name is, but they move the economy. It's impressive to see how when you are rooted to understand the power of money, you're not emotionally attached to the outcome. You know for a fact that if you're leading yourself in the right direction where you need to go, energy flows. So money comes back to you. And I've learned once, what a mentor said, if you divide the money in equal parts worldwide, in a matter of a short 5 years, it would go back to 5% of the population where they will continue to have 95% of the money. So that sums up what I've learned today. It's impressive. And we see it also in the business world where we are, because I couldn't compare anything better than the platform that we're in regards to the cash flow quadrant, because it allows us to come from the E and the S side to be able to transition to the I and the B side. But that transition there takes education, which is what we're doing now. So the cash flow quadrant is it's in alignment with what we do. So it's a money game. Thanks so much. Appreciate you, Jameson.
Yes, Fernando. And the one of the great things about being in the E and the S or the B and I is that you have a choice. We have the choice. We have economic freedom to choose.
Exactly.
And one of the things back to the Hunt brothers in the markets today, as you get more financially educated and you stop reacting to the emotions of the you get the financial intelligence, which is the E's and the S's are coming from more of an emotional like reaction. They react to the market. The B's and I's control the market. There's a big difference
Exactly.
between control and reaction. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the emotional intelligence that's really affected. And what I mean by the silver market right now, if with what I'm learning from a company about the silver and the prices and paying attention to silver is because it's gone up dramatically,
Yeah.
almost double, getting
Yeah.
it since it started its run not a couple like a year ago. And if you get the right, if you get the B's and the I's, you get good advice from people from the B and I quadrant that are knowledgeable. Like back when Rich Dad called Robert and says, "Get make sure you're not in the real estate market," because he was on the inside. He knew
Right.
what was going on because he had enough feelers out there from his buddies in the B and I quadrant that said, "Okay, something big is shifting." He paid attention to the little
Mhm.
details that most of us would forget about, and then all of a sudden he knew what was coming and and gave good financial advice that Robert knew exactly who to pay attention to and who to follow.
Exactly. I love this book. It's amazing. It's like Monopoly, like a platform, going back to our platform with real money, right? So this really hits home.
Yep,
So
and there's another.
the more I think about how I respond or react to a situation when difficult times arrive, it's like, how am I thinking? Am I thinking emotionally, just making a decision because I'm hurt right now, or should I just kind of see things from a different perspective to be able to take control of a difficult time? And most people go out of control when something doesn't work.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that the book of Rich Dad Poor Dad teaches us, which is the first book that was written by Robert Kiyosaki, where Robert was, he was working right with his brother, or his friend, best friend,
Mhm.
and then they were sitting there where all the employees were sitting down, right, complaining because they wanted to get a pay raise, and he was the next one on the list. He was so mad at his rich dad that he wanted to confront him why he was kind of like taking advantage of them, paying them very little money. So right in that lesson that he gave him, what he told him, you could be like everyone else, like those people that are complaining out there, or I can choose to just to take away your salary and now put you at real risk if you're still going to do what you're going to do. So when we become emotionally attached to money is when we lose. And that's the lesson that he taught Robert. I don't know if you remember that and reach that for that, Jameson. You could probably break it down a little bit better, but my point is we have to really think as business owners and investors, understanding how the market works and take advantage of the opportunities like silver right now, as you alluded to. It's $47 an ounce, where a month ago it was on the 30s, high 30s. I think it was high 30s, right? And now it's $47 an ounce. I'm just projecting what the future's going to hold. That's why we got to roll with it. Thanks, Jameson.
Yes, Fernando, and back to that story. What Rich Dad was trying to prove to Robert. This is young Robert, like 9, I think, years old, and he was working in his convenience store that one of he owned, and he was trying to teach Robert about the emotions of how people think on the E and S side and the B and I side. And what he eventually did was he was working for like 10 cents an hour, and his poor dad and everybody was saying, "Oh, that's slavery, that's child labor laws." And Robert was really, bringing in the heat. Whoa, and this is 9 years old. Oh, you're taking advantage of me, don't you know? And he was really, really, and Rich Dad actually intended that to happen. He intended him to feel like to try to feel like an employee that, and he says, "Wow, you're sounding like some of my employees that used to work for me." The emotional side, because everyone's coming at it from the emotional that he was talking to was coming at from the emotional side, saying what he should have been doing, and Rich Dad was was able to get Robert to feel that in a matter of a week or two, where some people take a whole, years to finally get to that fed up point. And then he went on to take away his money altogether, because if you really want to learn how, back to the saying in the beginning of the chapter, the rich create money, he had to learn to see the economic opportunity around him and then take advantage of it. And he went on to take advantage of it through comic books and creating a library. It was kind of crazy. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention in this point about a book is called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it talks a lot about the emotional aspect. It was, written from 1935, but from the like biblical era time frame, kind of in that time frame. And it's just seeing the emotions that the different characters go through and what they have to overcome to change their mindset and see the economic world through different eyes and take advantage of that and the emotions on the inside, and then take care of that. Anybody else out there, by the way? I have about 15 more minutes. We're going to kick off going on a little bit farther. Okay, let me go ahead and kick off. Well, let's try.
Jameson, real quick, I think what you're going to read on right now, which is be the bank, not the banker, goes back to what we were just talking about. I'm thinking. So I can't wait to hear this. Go right ahead.
Yeah, and by the way, yeah, in later on, what we're going to see in the future, and it's literally there are programs out there that the rich actually do that you and I can take advantage of, and it's very few people know about it, and it the rich have been doing it since the beginning, and you and I have access to this stuff. If you have to get the right advice though from the right people, and it's not commonly known. It's amazing stuff. Be the bank. Oh, Elisa, excuse me, Elisa. I see a hand. Elisa, come on in.
Jameson, good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. I'm very excited this morning because I can see through this reading that for some reason, right, Mr. Brian House decided in 2017 create this platform, and he's keeping it making better and better and better. And now, be the bank, not the banker, is something that the company added to this powerful platform. And the great and powerful thing is it doesn't matter if we are very knowledgeable about finance or not, we can pass from the quadrant ES to BI through this platform. That is great. It's something that I was thinking about it while Fernando was mentioning, right? And this book is something like, Mr. Brian House and the other leaders, they put in one platform for everybody. Everybody, if you speak English, if you speak Spanish, doesn't matter. You can pass from one quadrant to others and be in the quadrant B and I. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jameson.
Thank you, Elisa. Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity. Back to what Robert had, he had the knowledge that was given to him and trained to him through his mentor, Rich Dad, and he had access. He Rich Dad showed him where to look, who to go to. He was trained by a B and an I that he learned on his own. He had to learn it, but he was focused, just like an athlete is focused on athletics, just like a doctor is focused on medicine most of the time. And even says that in the richest man in Babylon in the very beginning. It's like it's not that the information is not out there. It's just that we didn't choose to focus on it. And that's one thing, like you're saying about the platform, we have not only access, but we have expert guidance and mentorship that actually will guide us along the way and tell us to when to move in or out of a market or in and out of an opportunity that can help build wealth instead of, like Warren Buffett says, rule number one, never lose money. And guess what rule number two is? Refer back to rule number one. Anyway, back to the show. Be the bank, not the banker. When I was in my 20s, mid 20s, excuse me, it dawned on me that the name of the game was to be the bank. And by the way, we do have a way of doing that on this platform. But that didn't mean to get a job as a banker. Wait a minute, because back what it says, the rich create money. I would say generate money. I like that word a little bit better in this instance. My advanced education was about to begin. It was during this period that my rich dad had me look up the words like mortgage, real estate, and finance. By the way, this was back when he was a child or younger, or mid 20s, excuse me. I was beginning to train my mind to see what my eyes could not. Interesting. He encouraged me to understand the game, and when I learned the game, I could do what I wanted with what I found. I decided to share my knowledge with anyone who was interested. And by the way, Robert Kiyosaki's poor dad, or highly educated and not as financially intelligent dad, was very highly educated and a teacher. And as Robert said later, that he eventually took up the torch from his dad because his dad really loved education and he really loved trying to make a difference. And that's how he chose to do it. And Robert, through his rich dad, is able to pick up the torch and actually translate that into financial education and financial intelligence and teaching people how to be financially educated. He also had me read books on the great leaders of capitalism, such as John D. Rockefeller. By the way, here in Cleveland, Ohio, he created Standard Oil. J.P. Morgan, hey, that's another guy here around Cleveland, Ohio. And Henry Ford, hey, talk about the Motor City around here. One of the most important books I read was The Worldly Philosophers by Robert Helbor. Help me out, though. For people who want to explore, for people who want to operate on the B and I side, his book is a must read. For it traces the greatest economics of economists of all time, starting with Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations. It's fascinating to look into the minds of some of our most important philosophers, the economists. These people interpreted the evolution of modern capitalism over its brief history. In my opinion, if you want to be a leader on the B and I side, a historical view of economic history is important to understanding both our history and our future. After the worldly philosophers, I recommend reading The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, Paul Zane Pilser, Unlimited Wealth, James Dale Davidson, The Sovereign Individual, Robert Preacher's The Crest of the Wave, and Harry Dent's The Great Depression Ahead. And one more thing I'll add to that is Ray Dalio's The Changing Economic Times. it's a video, and he also has The Economy in 30 Minutes. That's Ray Dalio. Those are great videos. The Changing Economic Times and The Economy in 30 Minutes. Talk about our modern day economic philosopher. When you make the biggest hedge fund ever, he's got to have his finger on the pulse of the economy and where it's going. While, boy, that name's got me. Heil Bonner's book gives you insight into where we have come from economically. The other authors give their views on where we are headed. Their contrasting viewpoints have been important. They allow me to see what my eyes could not. By reading books like these, I have been able to gain insights into the ups and downs, the cycles, the trends of the economy. The common theme in all of these books is that one of the biggest changes of all is right around the corner. And by the way, back to contrast, one of the things Robert Kiyosaki notes about his early financial education and continuing on is that he loved his rich dad and he loved his poor dad. And it was that contrast because he says in his saying, one side of the story is a sales pitch. Both sides of the story is an education. And why he says that is because you have the ability to take both sides in and through your own mind choose what you want to work with, or take out the golden nuggets and really work with them. How to play the bank. After 1986 Tax Reform Act became law, there were opportunities everywhere. Real estate, stocks, businesses were available for low, ultra low prices. While it was devastating for many people on the left side, it was wonderful for me because I could utilize my skills as a BNI to take advantage of the opportunities around me. Instead of being greedy and chasing everything that looked like a good deal, I decided to focus on real estate. Why real estate? For 5 simple reasons. Pricing. Real estate prices were so low that mortgage payments were far lower than the fair market rent for most properties. These properties made great economic sense, which meant there was little risk. It was like going to a sale at a retail store when everything was 50% off. Financing. The banks would give me a loan on real estate, but not on stocks. Since I wanted to buy as much as I could while the market was depressed, I bought real estate so that what cash I had could be combined with financing through banks. For example, let's say I had a $10,000 in savings to invest. If I bought stocks, I could only buy $10,000 worth of stocks. I could have bought on margin and put up only a part of the total cost, and the broker company would have loaned me the remainder. But I wasn't financially strong enough to risk a downturn in the market. With $10,000 in real estate and a 90% loan, I could buy a $100,000 property. If both markets went up 10%, I would have made $1,000 in stocks, but $10,000 in real estate. Taxes. If I had made $1 million in profit from stocks, capital gains tax, I'd have to pay nearly 30% in capital gains tax on my profit. But in real estate, the $1 million profit could be rolled tax-free into the next real estate transaction, basically delaying paying that tax. On top of that, I would depreciate the property for an even greater tax advantage. That's the phantom cash flow, the economic depreciation of an asset that relates to reducing your earned income or taxable income. An important note, an investment must make economic sense outside of the tax benefit for me to invest in it. Any tax benefit only makes the investment more attractive. The cash flow. Rents had not declined, even though real estate prices had declined. This puts a lot of money in my pocket, paid for the paid for the mortgages, and mostly importantly, bought me time to wait until real estate prices went up again. When they did, I was able to sell. Although I carried large debt, it never hurt me because the rents were far greater than the cost of carrying the loan. He basically had the loans. He had the people that were paying the mortgages pay for his loans for him through his businesses, and took advantage of every opportunity possible that was legally available to him in order to do that. And number 5, an opportunity to become a bank. Now here's the statement. Real estate allowed me to become the bank, something I have wanted to do since 1974. The rich create money. Here's the important part. Here's the meat. In Rich Dad Poor Dad, I wrote about the rich create money and often play the role of banker. The following is a simple example that almost anyone can follow. Let's say I find a house worth $100,000 and I get a heck of a deal and only pay $80,000 for it. Very discounted. Whoa. I pay $10,000 down payment and get a $70,000 mortgage I'm responsible for. Then I advertise the house is available for sale for its appraised price of $100,000. I use this magic words in the ad. House for sale. Owner desperate. No bank qualifying. Low down payment. Easy monthly payments. Oh boy, those are honey to the most people's ears. The phone rings like crazy. The house is sold on what is called a wrap or a lease to purchase contract. This is the power of contracts financially. The power is immense. The pen is mightier than the sword, as it were. In simple terms, I sell the house for $100,000 on an IOU. This is what the transaction looks like. My balance sheet. This is back to the income, assets, liabilities sheet. This is the definite balance or transaction statement. My balance sheet, assets, the IOU of $100,000 made by the buyer. Liabilities, the $70,000 of mortgage from the bank that is on the asset. The buyer's banker sheet. Assets, liabilities. Oh, so the liability on the buyer's banker sheet is the asset in Robert's the seller's bank statement. This transaction is then registered with the title and escrow office, which handles the payments. If the person defaults on the $100,000, I simply foreclose and sell the property to the next person who wants the low down payment, easy monthly payment home to live in. People line up for the opportunity to buy a home with these terms. The net effect is that I have created $30,000 in my asset column for which I am paid interest, just like the bank gets paid on interest for loans it makes. I was beginning to be the bank, and I loved it. Remember that Rich Dad said, be careful when you take on debt. If you take on debt personally, make sure it's small. If you take on large debt, make sure someone else is paying for it. In the language of the B&I side, I laid off my risk or hedged my risk to another buyer. That is the game in the world of finance. This type of transaction is done all over the world. Yet wherever I go, people come up to me and say those magic words. You can't do that here. No, they can't do that here because they don't know how to do it. My favorite saying, how can I do it? And there's a lot of people that have billions of dollars around the world that make it happen. Legally, ethically, and morally, of course. What most small investors fail to realize is that many large commercial buildings are bought and sold exactly in the same manner as described above. Sometimes they go through the bank, but many times they do not. There's a lot of meat going on here. Let's continue on with this one little process. It's like saving $30,000 without, oops, we're over time. We can stop here since we're at 10:30, and we could probably just go back over this one little process right there. Basically, they generated from buying the asset, taking out a loan, and then selling it for $30,000. That extra $30,000 from the $100,000 sale price was generated from thin air, like the banks do, and then someone is paying interest on that. The buyers is paying interest on that $30,000. So Robert, the bank gets their money, and Robert gets his money, and he literally generated that money out of nothing. So anyone out there, we'll stop at how to play the bank in the next upcoming episode of the Cashflow Quadrant Book Club. So let's open up the microphones. Anyone out there?
Hey, good morning, Jameson. Great read. Been listening to it all the way through. It's a real eye-opener when you really think about it. And the problem is that most people don't really think about it. And the concept of becoming the bank is something that came across my world in the real estate world a number of years ago. Because when you have the ability, and it doesn't have to be your money, right? We talk about that on our Wednesday night meeting. I talk about it on my radio show all the time. You know, what an amazing business being a bank is, right? If you take advantage, an example of what goes on today, you deposit your money in the bank, they pay you 0 to 0 point nothing percent on that money. They take that money and they lend it out today on an average of 6.5%. So there's an incredible profit margin on money that they never put up. And then when the payments come in, that money gets lent out again and again and again. So they're multiplying or leveraging the money multiple times. And that's what the wealthy do, right? You always hear the sort of the cliche about other people's money. But what he's talking about here in the book is how most people are absolutely oblivious to this process and the leverage that's available. And leverage is very important. You know, there's both positive and negative leverage. Positive leverage is when you borrow at 0% and lend it out at 6.5%. That's very positive leverage. If you borrow at 6% and then you make 4%, that would be negative leverage and something you don't want to get involved in. And think about this. Most people in the E and the S quadrant borrow money, i.e. credit cards, at 25, 35%, right? And get zero return on it because they're using that for living expenses or consumables. Whereas the smart, again, 800 credit scores, 0% interest, they can actually float their purchases and pay with later on depreciated money. So this chapter is actually a very, very important chapter I would even reread it because he's basically giving you the playbook. And so today there's a number of ways that we can be the bank, right? You can put money into an account and then lend it out. And let your money earn 6.5%, 8.5%, 10.5%. Or you can generate the lines of credit so that you can do that positive leverage. So if I had a line of credit at 6%, and then I knew investors that wanted to borrow and were willing to pay, 10%, then none of my own money. And as much as as big as my line of credit can be is how much profit I can make. And then a third way, right, is using life insurance. Now, we don't have time to go into that, but creating cash value life insurance that continues to grow and earn dividends, but yet you can still use that money and again use that positive leverage. So this has been a fun topic, and building up your own bank should be one of the things that you focus on as you put together your financial plan, whether it be business or personal. So back to you, Jameson.
Thanks, Eric. I mean, financial wisdom. You're in the game. You're playing the game, and you've seen the hurt from the the side when it hurts, and you've seen the gain, and you've been able to steer your compass, as it were, your economic compass, to the more advantaged side by getting great advice and being a great mentor and mentoring people for many years, and a trainer in the real estate market for realtors, and basically helping them with their 5-year plan. And it's one of the great things about this, it's through contracts, because the banks operate off of contracts. And because of that, did you know that one of the greatest sources of leverage or debt comes from the small banks, because they generate and basically make 10 to 15 times the amount of money for $1. Like they multiply the money at the bank level. They create so much debt at the bank level via the contract organized by the central bank through their operating charter. Where you and I, it definitely, we need to create some different things. And there's different forms of credit. There's personal credit, there's business credit, there's a credit you make when you have a tab at the bar. That's credit too. And back to that one thing called The Economy in 30 Minutes. Ray Dalio in a video describes this very eloquently, and it's just an amazing thing. Anybody else out there? Oh, by the way, insurance, the cash value life insurance, only through a very select, there's about 10 companies or so in the country. And with you have to have proper guidance. And this is not about financial, you do your own due diligence and find your own financial advice from the expert guidance. But definitely, when you find the right people that give you the right recommendation to the right information and the right programs and plans, the economic leverage that you gain from that one option gives you